and welcome to our latest session of the Deininger Leadership Talk Series. Today we have with us Mr. Andleeb Rabbi. Andleeb is a seasoned and accomplished HR professional, having experience of more than 2 decades. Since 2017, he has been serving as the HR director for G4S India, which is one of the leading global integrated security company offering security products, systems, and solutions. It is also one of the largest private companies in the country today, employing more than 130,000 people. Incidentally, Andleeb also leads the health and safety and marketing functions of the company. Prior to joining G4S, he served in the banking and financial services sector for several years and served as the CHRO for the life insurance and home and commercial finance businesses of Reliance Capital. And before that, he served in the with ICICI Bank and has also worked in the logistics and telecom sectors. Andleeb, a very warm welcome and thank you for joining us today. As you know, the theme for our chat is leadership agility. And probably what comes to mind is a famous quote from Bill Gates, who once said, "Success today requires the agility and drive to constantly rethink, reinvigorate, react, and reinvest." With that, I'd like to start the session by asking you today of what does agility mean to you in the context of leadership?
So first of all, Manish, thank you so much for inviting me for this discussion. And I hope that, we have worked in the past together and yes, I guess we have had long conversation. And we have enjoyed our conversation.
Absolutely.
I just hope that, this free-flowing conversation is free-flowing and will add a lot of value for people who would get to see it or hear it. I think that's what we'll try to do. And of course, through my experiences, I'll be talking about it.
Sure.
So when you told me that you want to hold a conversation with me on leadership agility, I started doing some research. What do I talk and how do I talk? And then I really thought that it has complicated me more than, made my life easy. So I thought, so let me go back to what I do the best. So if there is a complex thing, just start breaking it down in pieces and try to see and try to then make some sense out of it. Because we all do it. So when I broke it up and I realized that there's so much of science which is in this whole towards leadership agility that all of us do it knowingly or unknowingly. But we really never applied ourselves so much to understand what it is all about and why it is important. At least I haven't done so. So I looked at agility as one piece of the spectrum, leadership as another piece of the spectrum. And then I tried combining both the pieces together. So what is agility? The first thing, it's about power to move quickly and easily. So if you see the definition of this, it's largely the power to move. It's more physical in nature. Some of the synonyms of this is swift, nimble, fast, brisk, so on and so forth.
Right.
But when you look at leadership, it's a process to influence a set of people to achieve an objective. It's more mental, it's more emotional. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to merge emotional and mental thing towards a goal achievement through the physicality factor. So you're trying to bring pace to it. And I think that's one realization that I got when I started reading about it, that it is so very important to understand that what we are trying to do when we're trying to keep ourselves agile. And if I really see through the history or the passage of time or decades or centuries, I realized that this leadership agility has always existed. And to my mind, whether you talk about the Wright brothers or Graham Bell or Steve Jobs or creation of management practices by Adam Smith or Ford or whatever you talk about, they have been evolving. They have been kind of moving things fast. But the difference that I see, why it is so important in the current context, is that in the earlier stage, it was more internally driven and it was more driven to solve a problem. So for example, there was a need to succeed, there was need to achieve, there was need to build, there was need to do something new, there was a huge need to innovate. and there was a huge need to solve the problems.
Right.
But when I look at the world today is very different. A lot of physicality factors gone up. So I don't need to go to the shops. I don't need to go to the bank. I don't need to go across to meet Manish. Manish can be comfortable in his office. I can be comfortable. We can still have such a healthy conversation.
Yeah.
So the whole physicality factor is gone. So therefore, agility and leadership agility has become more external driven than internal. And that's where I think the big difference is. And that's what, to my mind, leadership agility means. And this is why it's very important in the current scheme of things.
That's a very interesting perspective. And, when you talk about, yesteryears, when it was more about being internally driven, your intrinsic desire to, mix with changes and to radically innovate. And today, I would sometimes believe we are forced in a situation where we need to be agile. I don't think it's any longer a choice. I think,
you're absolutely right, Manish. It's no longer a choice. And if you don't really continuously evolve or change, you are going to become a dinosaur possibly.
Right. And that brings me to an interesting point. So when I look at G4S, it's a global organization. It's one of the market leaders in its own segment, right? And presumably the focus, therefore, when you came on board, would have been about how do you help the organization sustain its leadership position, right? And that's a very different set of a challenge versus coming in and trying to turn around a business, or just maintaining a BAU. How has it contributed to your own development as a leader in the last few years?
I think that's a very interesting question, and there are multiple facets to this question. So I'll take one part at a time. The first part is clearly you asked about how does my current company, which is G4S, maintains its leadership position, and I'm guess that they've done it from the time of the inception. So there's something a lot for me to learn about. There's a lot for any viewer who is going to view this to learn about. That what has G4S done to maintain its leadership position. When I was talking about leadership agility, I think one of the key thing was achievement of a goal. So you put the physicality, the emotional offset of people towards achievement of a goal. I think that's the big point. So it's very important that your goal is very well defined. The goals do not change over a period of time. Goals do not change with changes of leadership. Goals do not change. So that's the one most important factor. I think in G4S, the goals have always remained constant. Not only this, I think the goal was not very narrowly defined only to meet the shareholders' purposes. The goals were much larger than this, that is to keep safety and security of employees and those in their care.
Right.
So anybody, when they work for G4S, they see a larger objective than just meeting the financial needs or their livelihood. I think that's the other thing which is important. The third thing which is extremely important in G4S context is that not only the goals were defined, the rules of the games are also defined. What you can do, what you cannot do, what is negotiable, what is not negotiable. Now, a lot of companies do this. A lot of companies define goals. The goals are larger than purpose, and they also define the negotiability and non-negotiability. What G4S does very different, and they've been doing it for over 100 years across more than 100 countries, is they have a great mechanism of deploying this whole goals and the way or rules of engagement. So, for example, when I joined this, first I was made aware in meetings, then I was trained, then I was certified, then again it was reinforced, and then I realized there's an audit system to see whether things are moving place in the right way or no. Then there are rewards and recognition system for really living it up or not doing it. So I think the deployment is very, very important. So for me as a leader, it became relatively easy to really conduct myself over here. So all I had to do is to first understand what they were trying to do, internalize, appreciate. I think these are three important ones, because unless you appreciate it, you understand it, you internalize it. There's no way you can with conviction you can talk to other people. So for me, it was just move ahead to the larger population, talk about it. And the thing that I did more is that I started showing the goodness of doing certain things to the people. That what you get when you achieve this. For example, when it comes to safety and security, India, you feel that you go across the road and you see a lot of accidents. Look at the behavior of people and you worry and how things happen. So we took up road safety in a very big fashion, and we started communicating to people. And when you saved life, you reduced injuries, there was a goodness that you carried. You saw the goodness of what you're doing. I think that's very, very important thing which happened in this space. And I think when you look at the safety and security in India, I think the first thing that comes to your mind is military. The second thing that you will think of is police force. And after that, there's nothing, absolutely nothing.
Right.
And that's where G4S comes in. And I think what they did extremely well is they put a very strong norms of quality. They put a lot of effort on training people. They put tremendous amount of effort on certifying people, and they got the best of the technologies and processes from all across the globe to really help people live up their values very, very strongly. I think so. For me personally, these are some of the things that I've kind of learned and realized that how a sense of purpose is very, very important in key business.
Interesting. I mean, just also the fact that you came into G4S from a different industry, also a different setup. This was a multinational, and you came from a very large Indian organization, right? And you worked across different sectors, and there is definitely something in there which allows you to make those transitions. I'm also kind of curious to understand, what were some of the traits that you believe helped you to make that transition coming into a multinational, huge workforce, right? A lot of blue-collar staff, a lot of complexities around rules, regulations, state, central, there are too many complexities and different business units within that, right? What do you think allowed you to make that transition successfully, take the step, move, and like you said, internalize and then reflect and be able to exhibit the kind of values and business philosophies that you were expected as a HR, as a CHRO?
Yeah. So I think if I look at MNC and Indian conglomerates, which I have largely worked in, I have a very crude definition of defining what they are. So MNCs are like a religion, and Indian conglomerates are rebels.
Okay.
So if you were to work in an MNC, so you have to, respect systems, you have to respect processes, you have to trust God. So if you were to advise somebody who's moving from an Indian company to an MNC, you should tell him that become religious and have a complete trust in God and be honest with them. I think that's one thing. But if you look at Indian companies, they have a need to do things quickly. They want to move mountains quickly. They have a very strong desire to achieve. They have a lot of things to catch up. So that's where, if you are working in India, those are something that you will really, really learn. So if you were to look at me as a leader in an Indian company, you'll find me faster, you'll find me tougher, you'll find me finding people who have that hunger and drive to make things happen, who believe in setting unrealistic goals for themselves and make it happen. Whereas if you were to see me in a company like in an MNC, you will find me far more softer, repetitive, possibly, patient, a greater sense of larger purpose, and working with the value system, which is very, very important and crucial for you to succeed in an MNC environment.
You very aptly defined what could be some of the more intrinsic differences that one could experience operating within a more dynamic and enterprising and entrepreneurial Indian business environment versus more methodical, systems-driven, a very high focus on ethics, values, governance. how does one make that transition? And I'm also kind of more keen to understand, because these can end up being very chalk and cheese in terms of the expectations and in terms of how you're supposed to behave and operate.
Absolutely.
I mean, what did you rely on to make that transition? I mean, was it tough? Was it easy? Did you take time? What did you kind of rely on eventually in terms of your own skills and experience to help you make that change in journey?
Yeah, I think I was in no great hurry, honestly. And I had a boss and colleagues who believed me completely, who gave me time to settle in. I think that was one great thing about this organization. It never asked me to deliver very quickly. It always told me, go understand, know things, and then possibly start looking at delivering. It took off the pressure of instant delivery or instant recognition from my mind. So those are some of the things that really helped me.
Right.
But on a personal front, I don't take myself very seriously. So I think that one thing really helped me to adopt to this environment, because if you start taking yourself very seriously, you just try to do too many things which might not work out. I always believed in having an enabling mindset. So being in HR or health and safety, we have to enable people to really, or leaders to really do things for themselves. Appreciating people for what they are. So if there were people who have spent a long time in this setup, I appreciated them. We got people who want to change things very quickly and, initiated a healthy dialogue between them, which was controlled. So, things didn't go out of the hands. So, because there is a value in both the things that you get.
Right.
Other thing that I did was bring in very quickly a very objective performance management system, because it cuts the clutter. If you don't have a very good measurement system of performance, you might land up wasting your time in too many things which are not important, so very important. I think other thing that whether this is MNC or Indian corporate, it's very important that I look at empowering people, because let's take example of, you would have traveled in kind of low cost carriers also.
Yes.
And not that you're MD, you might not be, but yeah, possibly sometimes it will force you to travel. And when you go and you have a kg excess, and the person knows that, last week over here and, you travel very frequently, and the person will really put you that, no, you have to pay for it or put it into the check-in. I don't know how much do we gain and how much do we lose out of that process. And if you empower that person to do certain things, to take certain decisions, maybe, a lot of things will fall in place. So empowerment is very important, because if you have made the purpose clear to people and you don't empower them, how do you expect them to take decisions which will help you to achieve your purpose? I think that's one thing which is important, which has kind of helped me to transition. I think teamwork, recognition, celebrations, they always help you in terms of understanding, aligning people and kind of working through with them. We are a very high transaction business, and therefore it's very important you quickly get into technology to do things which are non-value adding, which are repetitive in nature. So a lot of focus was there on technology, which helps me. And of course, needless to say, I have, whether it's an MNC environment or any other environment, there has been a great degree of orientation to achieve, which has really helped me to really make this transition in this culture.
One of the other questions that comes to mind when I talk about the subject of agility, and in some ways it's probably a contentious subject, because on one hand, there is the whole aspect of saying that, past success is a good indicator of future performance. But there is this now other school of thought which says, if you become overly reliant on how you have been successful in the previous years of your career, you might tend to have limitation to be agile and be more dynamic and be able to adapt to change, as the situation evolves externally, and especially in current times. Do you think that can be a deterrent? Have you ever found yourself in such a situation where you thought, I know this, I've done this before, I know how to do this, but perhaps that was not the best way to approach it in a different environment or a different context? I mean, how do you handle or how do you respond to such situations?
So let me give you two scenarios, Manish, and you bet it. All of us been through these kind of situation, and we all struggle to change. That's a real honest kind of confession. It's not easy, especially when, as you rightly said, when you have worked, you have succeeded enough. It's very difficult to really kind of adopt and change. So I'll narrate two scenarios with my one of the past employers, and it will help you to understand how some of these things pan out. So I was working for a financial services company, and we acquired another company, and we grew it very strongly in the first 4 years of business. We were doing pretty well. If you ask anybody, we were doing pretty well, and then suddenly we decided that we want to do faster than that. So what was one of the best solutions? And I see a lot of companies making these kind of mistakes. They went ahead and hired the top leadership from some other company which was possibly doing better from that perspective. So you have the DNA of this company, of the DNA leadership of the new team, and they're trying to gel along and try to work together. And honestly, they were very, very agile. But sometimes a lot of agility can really backfire if you don't understand the culture. So during these time of kind of Lehman Brother crisis, we landed up setting up 1,000+ branches. Wow. And with equal speed, we shut them down also because it didn't make sense. Then we get a partner who had a very, very long-term view. And then we have a kind of mixture of a original culture, somebody who came in from outside leadership, and then a partner, and we're trying to make sense of how to achieve things. So it's very important to understand who are the constituents, how do they work together, what is important to do, what should not be done. So some of those things are very, very important when you are trying to embrace change and be agile. So just being agile for the sake of being agile can really backfire badly. So it's very important to get this context. On the other side, there was another company which was a lending business, and then in the same situation, what happened is that they did a lot of reorganization. They look at the cost structure, they reduced the cost structures, they did the reorganization, they put the people who are best at credit as the leaders of the business function. They got somebody who had extremely good relationship with the bank while the person was in infrastructure to lead the treasury function. They took some bold calls which were to meet an external environment that they were facing, and therefore they emerged out much better, much stronger out of the whole situation. So it's very important that you understand the context, you understand the situation, you understand your purpose, and then try to be agile or try to bring changes in your system to adopt to a situation and succeed out of it. Eventually, that's what leadership agility is all about, that how do you really achieve to a purpose while you're doing some of these things. Yeah. I hope I've answered your question.
No, you did. And it's always, good to kind of get a more balanced perspective and not look at things with one single lens or in isolation. And like you said, I mean, leadership agility also is probably a context where you have to understand what a particular situation demands you to do. And again, it goes back to the fact that, there is perhaps not one size fits all approach that you can take to addressing any situation. But it brings me to my next question, Andleeb, and, even if we were to just take the last 18 odd months, from a complete shutdown to restart, working under severe restrictions and guidelines of the government as a business. I mean, it has been a huge impact on our personal and work lives. And then you start to see that things are normalizing, and then comes the second wave. And then, I mean, because of that, you're as a business and as leaders, you're forced to kind of make constant changes in terms of what are going to be your priorities, and accordingly change your strategies. And there is a lot of stop, gap, pause, start kind of a scenario that you're facing, and you have to constantly adapt to it and constantly change to it in a very short time frame, which can tend to be very challenging. I mean, I believe it sometimes can tend to be frustrating as well, right? And my question to you is, how do you think leaders can kind of keep up with the pace of change that is required? How do you think they can cope up with the dynamic nature of the environment that we are living in? What do you think that they will have to internalize and bring out in terms of their own qualities as a leader to be able to, I would say, survive, sustain, and still continue to grow?
Okay, difficult question. Let me try answering this. Okay, so as I said, don't take yourself very seriously. Keep the child awake in you. Be innovative. Understand changes.
Right.
Market and read and learn. I'm sure we would have learned all this or read all these things in terms of when it comes to leadership agility. So let me give you possibly a more practical approach of managing these kind of changes and adapting to it. When I say you don't take yourself very seriously, what do I mean? You know, it's a nice word to state, but it generally means that you create an environment for your people to speak out and to do things. You bind them to the larger purpose why we all exist. You get them to ideate and give their reasons why they're saying what they're saying. Try to get teams which are better than you. Believe in them, genuinely believe in them. Don't say for the sake of saying it. Play to their strength and make your weakness. So, for example, each of my team members or my peer group knows what my weaknesses are. So they know very well when it comes to these things, just keep it away from it. You know, it's just like this, you asking Virender Sehwag to score runs by running between the wickets is never going to happen.
Yeah.
You better let him hit. So I think that's some of the things which other thing is that you need to understand your team and be there when they need them most. I think that's very, very important. And I'm really meaning all these things when I say I don't take myself very, very seriously. This is what I mean. I think another thing is to generally appreciate and recognize them for their efforts for what they're doing, both in public and private. And this is a very important thing because a lot of time we do things which is in public forum something else, in private something else, which brings some kind of disturbances or conflicts within the whole system. I think you have to anticipate roadblocks and be there to remove those roadblocks and never ever make a statement that and which is true for me कि धूप में ऐसे ही बाल सफेद नहीं किए हैं. That's some of the thing that I really think is very, very important. And I think at an individual level, it's very important for you to train your mind that I might not know everything, but I definitely can do it. Or that we don't have a singular source of information. So meet your customers, meet your partners, meet your analysts, speak to your employees, speak to varied set of people, like for example, speak to young people, speak to people who are unrelated to you. Keep these interactions going on. Don't, again, at the cost of repetition, don't look at the data singularity. It's just like, traveling in an airplane. Again, I take my favorite examples and somebody serves you food and in the entire plane, nobody has eaten the food and somebody comes with your customer service feedback. It just doesn't make sense. You empower the person to, so some of those things are very, very important that you don't only rely on data and everything. I think these are some of the practical things that you can use to really create an environment of adaptability, create an environment of being agile as an organization, as a team, as a leader.
Again, interesting perspectives there. And again, it goes back to, for me, to connecting to the whole aspect of adaptability and change. And as ironic as it may sound, do you think one can prepare to be agile? Do you think one can prepare to enhance one's own adaptability and flexibility? How do you, I mean, different organizations and different individuals may have their own degrees of flexibility or agility in some sense, and knowing that you are operating in an environment where you have to be increasingly agile, how do you train yourself as an organization, as an individual, to kind of be more prepared, to be more agile?
As I said, that Manish, you have to really listen to your customers. You have to listen to your employees. You have to understand what they're saying. You have to look at trends and data which are not only related to your industry, what's happening around you. As I said in the initial, the physicality is gone. The changes are far more external in nature. And you have to really look at some of the cues from outside for you to really understand what needs to be done within the organization. For example, we know that we have been providing security guards to people. Now we understand it's just not about security guards, it's about an integrated solution that customers are looking for. They are looking at bringing their total cost of operations from a security perspective. they have housekeeping need, they have technology need. How do we really integrate it all together and bring it to the customer? So we are really kind of changing our teams, our structures, the way we look at problems, the way we look at customers. So some of those things you have to really look at it, and it will emerge out of, again, going back to the purpose, what we stand for. So we stand for safety and security of our customers. So that how do we deliver it best to them? I think these are some of the things that I would advise to for someone to really kind of stay tuned to what's happening externally and be ready to change. Be ready to change very, very quickly. That physicality factor, that speed factor.
Finally, what do you think are the top 3 qualities it would take for a leader to survive in a dynamic and disruptive business environment as we are witnessing today?
So I wouldn't say 3. I would rather say maybe more than 4 or 5, if you allow me to do so. And it's largely to paraphrase what we have discussed all this while. I think the first and foremost thing we need to understand that leadership agility is all about bringing pace to what we want to achieve. I think that's very, very important. And we have to be conscious of this, that, we can't take things easy. As I said, the external world is driving us to change, and therefore we have to bring pace in what we do. Number 2, has to be, so we know the external environment is changing. So we have to be designed to really adopt and change quickly. And it's very important that we do that. I think the third thing is the purpose has to be very well defined, and there has to be largeness to the purpose. So any company which is looking at only meeting the shareholder expectations, it's not going to do it. And you have, for example, Indra Nui, which did a great job when she became in charge of Pepsi, that she moved the company from a junk food to a healthy food company, and they have grown immensely while she was the leader. So I think the largeness of purpose is very, very important. And we have to also define what is negotiable, what is non-negotiable, so people understand what the rules are. And we have to learn to listen to people and enable them. I think these are some of the simple things that we do to really stay agile and to stay kind of nimble-footed for you to achieve your purpose much quickly than what possibly it might happen.
Yeah, simple, but very effective and very critical, I would say, in today's context. Thank you, Andleeb. This has been a wonderful, wonderful session. Hearing you talk about your own experiences and sharing your wonderful perspectives and opinions and thoughts as a leader yourself. And I'm sure this is going to be an interesting session for others to listen into and hear your takes on the subject of leadership agility and the different sub-themes that we talked about today. Thank you so much once again for joining us today and sparing the time to do this chat session with me. And of course, we'll keep in touch, and I hope to see you soon again.
Sure. And thank you for having me over and asking this interesting question.